Hello, and welcome back to a new guide video. And this time, we're going to be talking about RAN, and yeah, we're just be talking about RAN Cleave. I think RAN Cleave is probably the most popular form of Cleave, in my opinion. Just because RAN is hard to build, but I would say a damage RAN is hard to build. I think just a regular, like, Cleave setup RAN is not that bad because its base speed is incredibly high. And I think because of that, there are a lot of fake RANs out there, and they do just as well in Cleave, even in the higher ranks as like do regular damage RANs. I'd say the only benefit of damage RAN is it's a lot more useful in terms of imprint races than fake RANs, but I would say that's like the only advantage, I would say. But yeah, we're just gonna be talking about how to use RAN in this meta, even though I think RAN is a little bit hard to use. I think that's just Cleave in general. I think Cleave is super hard to use in general right now, but nonetheless, we're gonna try and explain how to use RAN. So first, I'm going to show off my RAN here. I also use RAN as my main form of Cleave, and I'm currently around Emperor level, so stats like this will, if you can reach stats like this, then you can comfortably say that you are an Emperor level. You have gear for an Emperor level Cleave account. So mine's around 315 with 83 crit rate to be able to one-tap fire imprints, like Fire Shuri or a Jacko or something, or a Siren if she's squishy. And he's pretty much built full DPS. I'd say a 310 RAN and above is good enough for Emperor. I would say a 300 RAN and above is good enough for Champion, and then maybe like 280, 290 is good enough for Challenger. So, as you can see, this is a quote-unquote real RAN because he doesn't have any bulk, he doesn't have like F-res or effectiveness, it's just all pure DPS and damage and speed. So I use this RAN a lot in Cleave imprint races where they just start picking Sid or Watcher Shuri or Fire Shuri or Veronica and all that stuff, and then he can one-tap all of those except the green imprints. And like a Wanderer, so she's like bulky or something. So yeah, you should already know what RAN does. The great thing about RAN is he's very, very flexible in terms of his team comps. Not in terms of his playstyle. I think in terms of playstyle, he's strictly only for Cleave. But in terms of within that Cleave hierarchy, you can draft RAN with pretty much anything, because I think it's mainly because of this artifact. This artifact lets you get away with picking stuff that shouldn't work, but it could work. So for example, you could pick RAN and see Pavel, and in paper that wouldn't really work because he only attacks once, right? But if this procs, then you have a way to activate Cable. Likewise, if you have a follow-up, like let's say Ada, then you can also pick Cable because Ada follows up off of RAN, and then Ada activates Cable off of that. Or you can pick someone like Charlotte that does the same thing. It's just very, very flexible. You don't have to S3, you don't have to S2. You can S2, S1, you can just burn S3 straight away. You can S3 regularly and save your souls in case they're running a team with no F-res. You can just S1 regularly. It's a lot of variety you can do with RAN, which is why I love using him. Obviously, RNL is his best artifact. Silver Rain and sort of Summer Twilight are an option, but the problem with those artifacts is that it's bad to say, but there's no RNG involved, so you won't be able to win games that you don't deserve to win. That's the best way to describe it. If you have RNL, think of like Navy Captain Landy, right? I think the best comparison to what I'm about to say is Navy Captain Landy, where you can pick a bunch of RAN counters, like I'll have a screenshot of it later, but you can pick a bunch of Rand counters. But if he high rolls, essentially, if he 2-3-1-1s, the RNL, Rand never loses, right? If he 2-3-1-1s, then you just lose, like, right off the rip, because he high rolled, right? It's the exact same principle with Navy Captain Landy, where you can pick a bunch of Navy Captain Landy counters like Lionheart, Rowana, LRK, etc., etc. But if she high rolls and keeps counterattacking and you never crit her, and she keeps healing and salvoing, then she just one taps your whole team and you just lose, even though you picked a bunch of Landy counters. And that's exactly how I feel. That's the exact same sentiment about Rand. So I feel like because of that, because of the possibility where you can win games you're not deserving to win, and that's happened to me too, then I think RNL is the best. Like, how many times have you seen Rands hit Auden or S2, S3 Eds into an RNL, and then you can S1 the defense broken and just kill him straight up and stuff like that? It's so toxic, and that's why a lot of people complain about RNL, and which is justified, right? Because RNL is like dumb, but if you're a cleaver, you just have to embrace that dumb and then just use it. You just gotta use it. So yeah, plus 30 RNL, super worth on Rand. Yeah. So let's talk about his follow-ups now. I will switch my screen back and forth. So I will show his list right here. So here is what I made, kind of like a graphic for Rand. Now there are a lot of bad matchups for Rand, but as you can see, a lot of these bad matchups can be played around. I'll get to how to counter pretty much all of these. But for now, I just want to talk about his follow-ups. So as you can see, Jacko, Summertime, Astromancer, Requiem Rowana, Ada, Closer Charles, and Summer Break Charlotte. You should have pretty much all of these if you want to successfully cleave. I don't have Closer Charles or Summer Break, so you don't really need those two, but they are still good options you can run. Once I have my Closer and Summer Break, I'll be able to pretty much have all of the guaranteed follow-ups for Rand. So let's first talk about Jacko. So Jacko is probably the most popular cleave unit right now for DPS purposes. I'll show mine. My Jacko isn't anything crazy, but she gets the job done. So here's my Jacko. She's around 220, and MCD's a little bit under 12k, probably like around like between 11. I want to say maybe 11k or something, maybe a little bit below that. But she's also missing a bunch of imprints and level 30 artifacts and stuff like that. And why Jacko is really good is because first of this buff right here, which she gives to the back of the ally, that's really cracked. And then the second is a 30% CR. So with this, ran S2, S3s, and then you put him in the back, right? You soul burn, and he can land potentially stun, decrease the chance, restrict, or unbuffable debuffs if you get lucky. And this will push up your Jacko all the way to the front, well, depending on her speed. So now let's talk about speed tuning real fast. So how to speed tune properly is, you see how it says 30% CR, right? So she pushes up CR by 30 if the target has a debuff. So how you want to do this is you want to calculate 70% the speed of your Rand. So if I go to my Rand is 315. So you want to calculate 70% of this speed, and this will guarantee your Jacko, barring like obviously like no speed RNG. But it's a good general rule of thumb. Having the 70% speed of your Rand will make it a guaranteed follow-up for Jacko to go after, assuming there's no like weird CR manipulations like that's happening, like a Politis or like a Sage Ball cutting all the way up or something, or some weird Eternus Decade shit. So if I bring my calculator, because my math skills are not it right now, 70% of 315 is 220. So my Jacko's pretty much perfect. So this is good enough to cut my Rand, essentially, right? But obviously, if you're gonna use Zeo Jacko, your Jacko should be faster than this, right? But I just want my Jacko to cut my Ran, not my Zeo, because I don't really use Zeo Jacko too often. Okay, so there is that. Just pretty much aim for stats like this. Make sure she has pen set so she does more damage. Jacko symbol, or what's the other artifact? Merciless Skeleton are our 2 best in slots. So just pick whichever one, and make sure she's plus 15. Let's go on to the next one, which is Summertime Iceria. So there's 2 builds you can run for Summertime. You can either go full effectiveness or a damage build. Mine's on the damage build. Full effectiveness, you'll see Summertime Icerias have like around 200 to 250 effectiveness. I just really like the damage on my Ran, so, or on my Summertime, so that's why I have her with this 6k attack build. And make sure this artifact is plus 30, because otherwise you're gonna be very, very inconsistent and you're gonna hate the game. And I feel your pain, because I was using a plus 15 for the longest and it was not fun. And as you can see here, this time she has to be 85% the speed of your Ran. So if you take 85% of 315, your summer break should be around 267, 268. So I'm around 4 speed under, so I need to make my Summertime faster. And there are games where my Summertime doesn't cut, let's say, a Lua or a Conquer Lilies, and I lose because of it. Especially if their Lua's like 312-ish, like insanely fast. So yeah, I need to improve my Summertime build, where she needs to be around 4 or 5 speeds faster. But once I have the gear for that, I'll be able to do that. I'll have to replace stuff like this, or something like that, where I can get a little bit more speed. So yeah. Also, my Summertime has 0 bulk. The bulk's only required if you fight against Green Celine. But since Green Celine isn't really picked often because she sucks, I can get away with running a no bulk Iceria like this, and it ends up working pretty well. So yeah, Summertime Iceria, obviously she counters all of the Senyas and Destinas that you have to fight, Karinas as well, the Savior Audens that Ran struggles versus. There's a lot of matchups that Summertime wins that Ran struggles versus. So let's talk about the next one, Astromancer. This is another unit that you have to have if you're going to be Ran cleaving. Here's mine, Astromancer. Now, the best install artifact for her is going to be Unseen Observer, because of the 20% CR. And because of this lets you essentially get 20 souls, so you can soul burn someone else, which is really, really good if you're pairing her with Summertime, or if you want to be able to soul burn herself. And yeah, so with this, she gets 10 souls here, and then she gets 10 souls here, and then she gains 20% CR there, and she gains 20% CR here. So she pushes up 40% CR. So she should be 60% the speed of your Ran. So let's do 316 times, or 315 times 0.6. And she needs to be 189. So I'm 2 speed above, so like it doesn't really matter. So this speed is perfect for Astromancer. She will be able to cut my Ran every single time with no question, barring limited speed RNG. And because of that, because she doesn't really need much speed, you can run attack percentages like how I am right now. 76 speed isn't too hard to achieve, especially, or 74 speed I would say. It isn't too hard to achieve, especially since if you're running speed set, and some of your pieces have speed on them. Like I don't even have crazy speed on my gear, on my Astromancer. Well, except this one. This one's 18, but the rest are like 4 and 8, and you can like balance it out essentially. Yeah, and make sure she's on full damage, so you can one tap a lot of stuff after you defense break. I'm pretty sure if you defense break Senya, then Astromancer can, well, at least with my build. Actually, that's probably not true, but it still does a lot of damage to like defense broken target, even if you don't crit on stuff like Landy and stuff. Obviously you draft her if they draft any counter attackers. If you see them draft Landy, Green Armin, save your odds a maybe. But Green Armin and Navy Captain Lanny and Rem. Rem is another one. Then you would pick up Astromancer Lena. It's pretty much a force band every time. Okay, now let's talk about Requiem Roana. Now, Requiem Roana is the unit that deals with Edward Elric and Designer Lilibet, and Destina as well. Because she is a unit that has cooldown reset, and cooldown reset just severely hurts those units. She's also a Karina counter to an extent. Now, with Roana's build, you want to put her on Book, which lets you soul burn your Ran. That'll be your best in slot. She doesn't need any speed or crit damage, so just toss away all those stats. You want to build her as much effectiveness as possible, so I have 273 on triple hit set. So this will be able to debuff like 300 FRES units, potentially. And you also want to make sure she has a little bit of FRES. So what the FRES is for Edward Elric. It's really bad if your Roana gets reset by an Edward S2 after you ran S3. So that's why you run like, I have mine on around 80 and that's good enough for me. I haven't really gone debuff at Edward at all. So 82 is good enough. And she can resist the S2 debuff and then just reset everything right after. And the rest you can just put into attack if you want to. So that way you can make your S1s do a little bit more damage. So as you can see, I have pretty much all of these stats where it's just effectiveness. It's a mix between effectiveness, attack, and FRES. So it's a pretty specific type of gear that you need. But this unit is very strong. Especially because Roana struggles versus immunity, right? But Ran just strips all the immunity away, so your Roana can just do her thing for free. Yep. And she's also an activator for your summertime. And, well, I guess Ran's already an activator. But if Ran gets banned, then she can be an activator for your other AoE units like Summertime Iseria and Astromancer and stuff like that. So this is another necessary unit you have to have if you're going to be cleaving with Ran. Now let's talk about the last one, and that last one is going to be Ada. So, what does Ada deal with that Ran struggles against? Two answers. One of them is Spectre Tenebria, and the other one is Tempest Cern. Now, those two units, if you draft, let's say, a Ran Jacko, right, with Zeo, you don't really have much reach for Steny, because a lot of it, yes, you S3 with Ran, but that's your only reach, and an S3 is not going to kill a Spectre Tenebria, especially if she's behind barriers and mitigation like LRK and Scarable and Destinas and stuff like that. So you draft Ada to deal with those, and with Ada, she can also deal with Tempest Cern because what's it called? T-Cern goes into stealth after you ran S3, assuming she's like past her damage mitigation limit. And if she cuts with Secret Art Storm Sword, then you just lose right off the rip, especially if she's on the EE that dispels buffs. And because of that, that's really bad. And you can't really summertime that, and you can't really Jacko that either, because if you bomb her, she can just cleanse, and that's not good. So that's how you have Ada. Ada is a guaranteed 2-hit with Book, so make sure you have Book. And she can strip the stealth. She's very good versus stealth units. And she's also good versus stuff like A Robbie because of the stun. She's good into stuff like anything that has buffs at the start that you can just strip right away. And she's just very strong, and she's another necessary unit you should have with Ran, because she'll activate off of your S2 off of Ran instead of the S3. So you have that distinction as well. A lot of units, they activate off of Ran's S3, but Ada activates off of Ran's S2. So you don't have to S3 with Ran if you don't want to. Like, let's say they have an ed, you can S2, S1 ed, and then you can just S2, S2 with Ada, and that should kill the ed. Yeah. Oh, and Ada is also really good dealing with ed as well because she's blue. So Ran, what am I saying? Edward only has a small chance to debuff Ada, especially since Ada's gonna have immunity after Ran's S2. So the chance is even lower. So yeah. So the build for Ada is pretty difficult. Ada is probably one of the hardest DPS characters to build because you need insane gear score. So first you need damage, second you need the speed, third you need the crit rate, and fourth you need the effectiveness. Full DPS Ada doesn't work anymore because the meta is just so tanky that if you don't land your debuffs or the CR manipulation off of the S2, then you're going to struggle very hard. So with this build, I need to be 80% the speed of my Ran because of this. So let's do 315 times 0.8. Now obviously if your Ran's like 300, then you can just do 300 times 0.8, which is going to be 240. Let's minus 315. My Ada needs to be 252. So I'm 2 speed off, but I mean, it's good enough for now, right? It's good enough. 2 speed below, I mean, if I lose off of like that 1% RNG similar with Summertime, then so be it. Ada's just extremely hard to build. As you can see, I have 18 speed here, I have 16 here, I have 16 here, 12 here, and 11 here. Now, there are going to be people saying, well, you don't technically need 80% the speed of your Ran because you have stuff like Astromancer. You can pair Ada with Astromancer, which is going to boost up your Ada again by another 20, or you can have stuff like Summertime, which is going to boost up your Ada by another 20 again, because this is also a non-attack skill. Now my counter argument to that is, in an RTA setting, you're not guaranteed to be able to get away with picking those units. There's post bans that exist, there are certain matchups you don't want to draft both Ada and Summertime or Astromancer in. You shouldn't ever rely on picking another unit to deal with another unit's weaknesses if that same unit already synergizes perfectly with your opener. So in my example, where I have Ran Ada works perfectly by themselves, right? They only lose to like Violet and like these other green units, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff, but in terms of like their synergy, they already have perfect synergy. Ran S2s, which activates Ada, right? That's all you need to do. You don't want to purposely nerf your own character and rely on another character's passive to do that character's job for you. That's pretty risky to do, especially in RTA, where they could just like post ban that unit, and then if your Ada doesn't cut, then why did you draft Ada in the first place? You want to be as flexible as you can. So that's why when I say all these units have to be a certain speed of your main Ran, yes, it is possible that if you have Summertime and Astromancer, then your Astromancer could be even slower, right? Because your Summertime is going to boost up the Astromancer. But like I said, it's just way too risky. That's a very narrow way to look at RTA, especially you're like deconsidering all the outside factors. So the safest way is just make your Ada 20% the speed of your Ran in a Cleave set. That's the best way I can explain. So my Ada is 250. Make sure she's at least 3k attack. Make sure she's around 90 crit damage or crit rate, because she's entirely AoE, so you don't need to have like insane crit rate. You just need to like crit some units and then land the debuffs on the S2 and S3. So she's on some crit damage, so I have my crit damage neck, and she's around 50 effectiveness. This is so that you can strip away those annoying immunities, right? And push back units that need to be pushed back, and you can stun them as well, like A-Robbie and stuff. So yeah, I'd say an ideal build is, I wish my Ada was around 3700 attack, 252 speed. Obviously 100% crit chance would be ideal, but you don't need it. But I would take that. 260 crit damage would be perfect for me, and around 80 effectiveness. So that's like insane gear score, right? I'm gonna drink some water because I'm talking a lot. That's insane gear score, but she's very, very strong. I love Ada. Now let's talk about Closer Charles, which I do not have, but Closer Charles is essentially the same thing. He activates if a unit is below half HP, I believe. And with Ran, if this will only work with damage Ran. Unfortunately, this won't work with fake Ran. But if you have damage Ran, then you can S2, S3, or you can S2, S1, and push up the Closer Charles, and then your Closer Charles can push up the rest of your team. Which is going to be super strong if you're running stuff like Straze or Bryceria and stuff. And so make sure, I believe Closer Charles is also 80% speed of your opener. So you can run a 252 Closer Charles as well. Yeah, it's another bridge option. Now lastly is Summer Break Charlotte, which I don't have, but I know her push-up is 25%. So you would take 75% the speed of your Ran. So in my case, it would be 236. I would have to run a 236 Summer Break Charlotte to guarantee the Summer Break Charlotte's turn after she S1s. So with Ran, you would S2, S1, and then Summer Break would go, and she would do her dual attack, and then she would cut and then be able to use her S3. So yeah, those are all of his guaranteed follow-ups, and you should have all of them pretty much. So now let's talk about anchors. There are a couple anchors that I want to mention here. Let's switch back to this. So the main anchors I've seen people use with Ran, and I use with Ran personally, are Savior Auden, Lionheart Sermia, and Navy Captain Landy. I think Savior Auden is the most common one, just because Savior Auden is so annoying for Ran players to deal with. Unless you hit, of course, but yeah. Right side Aiden never gets hit. The Aiden build, it doesn't really matter what your Aiden build is. Mine's just on this like pretty average build where she's like around 220. She just has to be faster than the other standard units, so you can give your team invincibility before they take turns. 225 is good enough for me for that. Honestly, the damage and the bulk doesn't matter too much. She's only pretty much there for the invincibility to stabilize your team. That's the main purpose of having a Savior on an anchor. And now let's talk about Landy, which I don't have unfortunately, but her build's like, just run the standard Navy Captain Landy builds. You know what the Navy Captain Landy builds are, so I shouldn't have to explain those. And Lionheart, same thing. You know what the Lionheart Sermia builds are. There are a couple options you can do though. You can run the Golden Rose Destruction with speed. Or my bad, not with speed. That is a build you can run. But you can also run a speed Lionheart Sermia. So if you know they have an Ed, you can run a Lionheart Sermia that's 80% the speed of your Ran, so around 250. And just run full tank, or full damage, no bulk at all, and then just blow up the team. And you can use their Ed or their Politis as a activator for your own Lionheart. So very, very strong option. I just don't have the speed defense gear for that, unfortunately. Oh wait, I didn't show my Aiden build. Oops. Let me show that real fast. So here's my Lionheart, just standard Lionheart. And here's my Savior Auden, standard Savior Auden, 220. Okay, now let's talk about her as other openers you can pair him with. The most common opener you're going to be pairing with Ran is going to be Zeo. Unless you're pre-banning Zeo, of course. But it's going to be Zeo most likely. Zeo Ran Cleave is extremely popular. So if you have a Zeo, then go for it. Start Zeo Ran Cleaving. It's very, very strong. That's what I did for the entirety of the past 3 seasons, and I got to Emperor every time with pretty like mediocre gear, all teams in all terms considered. Just because I don't have like my only fast opener is Ran, and that's it. So, and he's only 315 compared to these other Emperor players that have like 310 Steve Elises and 310 Luas. So yeah. He's pretty decent with Amin as well. Peira's okay, not the greatest anymore because that's just, I'd say that's too many debuffs. And not cool is kind of the same thing, but I guess the one benefit of not cool is her bind the debuff. And Flan is here if you remember Lucina Fanboy Cleave where it's Ran Flan and then Politis BBK plus Briar. That's still a thing that you can do and get away with. Now let's talk about situational picks. These situational picks, I mean, it's, yeah, I shouldn't have to explain these. I don't want to talk too much about when you should pick these. You kind of just have to experience playing for yourself. But to give like a very, very short breakdown, Ran Politis is a very, very strong core you can do if they have Karina, Sage Ball, Infinite Horizon Acades, AOL, RB, Senya, Destina, Ocean Breeze. Like, Ran Politis is good into all of these. Same with Elena, just because she cuts the CR that they gain, as well as her S2 does a shit ton of damage if you run full damage, while also being a book holder, while also getting rid of skill nulls off of AOL, or locking Destina off of using a revive, or stripping Senya immunity buffs. Just a lot of different things that Politis is good for that Ran struggles into, but that's just like a situational pick, obviously. These are just imprints, you just pick them in case you're racing. C Pavel, obviously if you have RNL, you can activate it off of that. You have Ran Jacko that can activate your C Pavel. You have stuff like Crit Para, Crit Nakwo, a couple options. A Leica, if you know that their team is playing extremely slow, then they have like 0 speed. And they have stuff like Blue Rem, they have stuff like, why did I say Blue Rem? It's just Rem. They have stuff like Rem, they have stuff like Ed, Designer, Rimuru, stuff that you just have to just delete turn 1. Destina as well. So there's a couple. And Briar is there for stuff like Green Violet, stuff like Kayron, stuff like Senya, stuff like Arbiter Vildred, stuff like Karina, Rimuru, Savior Auden, Destina as well. He's also a very, very strong pick to pair with Ran Cleave. Now, I'm going to just talk about his bad matchups now. Now, obviously, he has a shit ton of bad matchups, but all of these can be mitigated by the fact that his follow-ups, all of them in one way or another, can deal with these. Now, the only two exceptions I would say to this is Navy Captain Landy and Bellion. These are my two pre-bans, so I would just pre-ban Navy Captain Landy and Bellion if you're Ran cleaving, because it's just too hard to deal with. It's Navy Captain Landy is just way too good, and Bellion, you need your souls if you're gonna be soul burning with your Ran, obviously. So these two gotta go. Now for Ed, Ed is kind of a bitch to deal with if you're Ran cleaving, just because obviously you want to land your defense breaks, right? And to counter Ed, you need to draft stuff like Ada, stuff like Requiem Roana, and then Summertime. And then you just have your Ada and Requiem go before, and then hopefully that'll take care of the Edward. It's pretty hard to deal with an Edward. Same thing with Auden. It's pretty hard to deal with Aiden, just because if she's on Moonlight Dreamblade and you S2, S3, and you miss, she can one-tap your whole team if she's on like full damage, and that's very scary. So to deal with Savior Auden, you can draft stuff like Summer Break Charlotte, you can draft stuff like Closer Charles, you can draft stuff like Summertime Iceria if she's bulky. Astromancer is an okay answer, but it's not reliable because it doesn't stop her from pushing up. So you have to figure out an answer to that. You have Zahak, you have Bryceria. There are a couple. Just be careful when you're drafting those picks because those units like Zahak, they can just get Zeo'd or they can get like Fire Correct or something like that. So you have to be pretty careful. Honestly, Aiden is harder to deal with than Ed, in my opinion. So you can pick Saber Auden as an anchor if you want. Now let's go to Zeo. Zeo, if you're not Zeo Ran cleaving, he should honestly also be a pre-ban. Zeo just destroys Cleave if you leave him open. He just shuts down what you want to do, and then you just have nothing after. So, yeah, this is like, I would say this is the number one reason why Zeo Ran Cleave is so popular. Is just because you only have 2 pre-bans, and you have to pre-ban Navy Captain Landy and Valiant, which means Zeo's open, and you don't ever want to leave Zeo open if you're cleaving. So that's why people just pick Zeo and then just pair him with Ran and just cleave with that. So yeah. Designer's next. How to deal with Designer? You pick Requiem Rowana. Requiem Rowana destroys Designer. Just because she'll be cooldown reset, and she won't be able to do anything. And you can also pick stuff like Ada. Ada's not a bad answer into Designer. Saber Auden's pretty good into her as well. She can just kill with Soil Cycling Seasons. Celine, you can draft BBK, Bryceria, or a bulky Summertime. That'll deal with that. Politis, you have stuff like Jacko. You have stuff like Green Sid. You have stuff like, what else is there? Not a lot actually, now that I think about it. But if it's a DPS poly, then she just dies off of S2 so there's that for you. But yeah, I'd say Jacko's probably the best one, or a Green Sid, just so you can one-tap that Politis. Just don't bring non-attack skills, obviously, and you should be fine versus that. C Pablo's a good option too. Rimuru, you can just not S2 with Ran. If you see a Rimuru as an anti-cleave option versus Ran, just don't S2. Just soulburn your S3 straight up, and then you should be fine. AOL, how to deal with AOL is the 2 options you can bring are Politis or Ada, one of the 2. Since they'll just get rid of the skill moves for you. And Karina, Summertime's an option, Requiem Rana is an option. Ran himself, just bring any bug with Ran that can deal with Karina because he'll just defense break. Sage Ball, Politis, and Requiem Rana are the best answers. Same with Infinite Horizon Acades, same with Arby, same with Senya, same with Destina, and same with Ocean Breeze. These 6, they all lose to Poly Requiem Rana. It used to be the case where when Requiem Rana wasn't out, these 6 were maybe not, no, not Katie, because she wasn't out yet, but these 5 were a bitch to deal with. Actually, I don't know if Ocean Breeze is out by then. Let's just say these 4. Sage Ball especially. Sage Ball was a bitch to deal with because they could just post-ban your Politis and he would be guaranteed to take turns like after you ran. Because there was no Rowana that could just reset him right after, guaranteed, right? But after Rowana came out, Sage Ball kind of just died off the face of the earth. So you don't have to worry about Sage Ball. That's the exact same reasoning with Acades as well. Acades is pretty much Sage Ball. In terms of their use in anti-cleave. And yeah, all these CR manipulators, right? Kairon, you have Summertime, you have Astromancer, you have Bryceria, those are the best ones. Violet, you have Summertime again, you have Astromancer again, you have Jacko to an extent. Crimson Arm, or no, it's Crimson Armin. Green Armin, you have Astromancer, and that's really it. You have Knockhole as an opener as well. Just be careful about Green Armin when you're playing RTA. But most of the time he's gonna be postman. Yulha, there's always the fact that you can just crit Yulha and defense breaker. If you don't get that, you can draft stuff like Roana to cooldown reset. You can draft stuff like Summertime. You can draft stuff like A Leica, Jacko as well. A couple options. Elena, Requiem Rana again, Politis again. Honestly, she should be this category. These units are kind of all these units just get countered by Politis and Requiem Rana. T Surin, Ada obviously is an amazing answer to her. Requiem Rana is a decent answer to her as well. Besides that, I would say that's it. Politis, yeah. Bryceria. And Rem, you have A Leica, you have Astromancer. Those are the main two, I would say. So, and Green Set as well. So as you can see, yeah, all these units, except like maybe Navy, Captain Landy, Bellion, and Zeo, if you're not using them, they all have a way to be dealt with, but these units like here are just a lot harder than the units say like an Ocean Breeze or an Elena or a Violet or Kairon or something, right? So now let's do some, I've never done this before, but let's just talk about some drafts that you might be going up against if you're rand cleaving, right? Let's say your first pick, right? So if you're first pick, don't first pick rand. It's way too easy to counter pick, and if you first pick rand, then you're gonna give them Zeo for free. So if you're gonna be Zeo rand cleaving, let's say you first pick Zeo, right? And let's say your pre-bans are gonna be Navy, Captain Landy, and Bellion. Now the proper response, if you see a Zeo first pick, is something like Savior Auden and Karina. These two deal with Zeo extremely well, right? Now in response, let's say you pick your Ran. You need a way to deal with Saber Auden. You already drafted a way to deal with Karina with your Ran, so you just need something for the Saber Auden. So let's say you draft like, let's say Summer Rake or something, right? Or Politis. Let's say you draft Politis because you don't want the Karina and Saber Auden to push up. So let's say you draft Politis here. Now, you still need a way to deal with Aiden, and that will come later in the draft. So now if they see something like this, they can draft, I'm not sure, stuff like this is like super dependent on draft fate. I'm just gonna give some examples. Let's say they draft like, what's a pretty common anti-cleave answer that people still run? Like Senya. Let's say they draft like a Senya. And they draft like a Edward, right? Edward's pretty useful into all this debuffs. Now, on paper, this is already a losing draft for you. So this is why you need a lot of flexibility for rand cleaving. So you still need a way to deal with Aiden, as well as a way to deal with Ed. So here you can pick up a Summer Rake Charlotte, as well as let's say a Zahak, right? Or Bryceria. Something that can deal with this Aiden. Let's say you pick Bryceria. So let's clone this. Actually, I want to draft Bryceria here. I want to draft a Leica. So let's clone this. Just because Bryceria will lose to Ed. So this could be like a pretty decent draft versus this team. And then you would just ban last here. So let's say they draft like Celine, right? Because Celine dicks on that team. So they just draft Celine here. This would get banned. So this is just automatically out. So let's just put that away. And with this draft, you kind of have a way to deal with everything to an extent. You have Summer Charlotte to deal with the Aiden. You have Polly plus Rand's Stigma to deal with Karina, so she never pushes up. You have Polly to deal with Senya. You have A Laika to deal with Ed. And this will just come down to what they pre-ban. So if they pre-ban like A Laika or something, you can S2, S3 with Rand, just eat the Aiden counter, and she won't be able to push up. And then she also won't be able to one-tap Summer Break, because Summer Break's a little bit tankier on the tankier side. And then Summer Break can just kill everything after that. On the S3, right? And if she doesn't, then you have like Polly to follow up, or you have Z to follow up. So that's like an example draft you can do. Let's say you want to start picking anchors, right? Let's say they don't pick Saber Audit. Let's say their first pick this time. So what's a really popular first pick? Conquer Lilius, right? Let's bring up Conquer. Right? And let's say you draft Zeo in response because you're cleaving. So here's your Zeo, and let's say this time you want to bring an anchor. So let's say you bring Saber Audit. Now, the Conquer Lilius player, if they're playing like standard, then they will pick stuff like Last Rider Crow here. They would also pick stuff like, let's say Yulha to deal with the Aiden. Yula's a pretty good answer. Oh, Yula's already here. So let's just clone this. So already their team is extremely tanky, right? Now you'll notice in this draft, they don't have a debuff cleanse. So what you can do is draft stuff like your Ran right here. And you can draft your Summertime, because they don't have any debuff cleanse. So we can clone this. Actually, you'll notice this draft is, if you watched the E7 World Cup, it was one of Pupus's games. He fought a team similar like this, and he lost because he didn't pick Summertime. And he, on his account review, he actually admitted that if he picked Summertime, he would have won. And I agree, because when I was watching it live, I was also wondering why he didn't pick Summertime, because Summertime into stuff like LRK, Conk, Yuha, all that stuff, it's free because they don't have any debuff cleanse. So I was also pretty surprised. But yeah, they have no debuff cleanse, so Ran Summertime looks great here. So now they have to pick debuff cleanse. So let's say they draft Ed plus Designer, right? That's like the most common ways to deal with debuff cleansing as anti-cleave. And here you can draft your Requiem Rwana, because Requiem Rwana deals with Designer and deals with Edward to an extent. So in this scenario, obviously your post-ban is going to be either Ed or Designer. In my opinion, you should pre-ban the Ed, just because you can one-tap Designer with Saber Audit. So what you can do is, let's say they post-ban Requiem Rwana, right? So this is because obviously she's last pick, so she's gone. And then you post-ban Edward Elric. So it'll be these four, right? So how to deal with that Designer? If your Aiden's on full damage like mine with Sword of Cycling Seasons, she'll just blow up that Designer. So you can push back the what's it called? Conquer Lilius, my bad. Push back the Conquer Lilius and hold your skill with Rand. Don't S2, S3 here, because you're just gonna proc Designer if you do that. And Conquer Lilius is gonna be silenced, right? So you don't have to worry about her. And so you just S2, S1 the Designer, right? And then you S3 with your oh my bad, it's gonna be Summertime that takes a turn next. Just place the bomb on anyone, doesn't really matter. Let's say you just place the bomb on like LRK or something, I don't know. And then your Saber Auden goes, right? S3 the Designer, and then keep your team alive for next rotation, where you can kill the Designer and then you can start bombing everything after. So you're just delaying a turn. So you S3 the Designer, she's gonna die most likely because of Sword of Cycling Seasons and insane damage. And the fact that she's gonna have chip damage already with the Ran S2, S1, and then Summertime S1 potentially as well. And then once she dies, then you can just start placing bombs everywhere. It's not like LRK and Eula and Conquer Lilius that Silence can do anything to get rid of that invincibility, right? So after she's dead, you can use your Ran S2, S3, or just S3, my bad, because you already S2'd. You can S3, place bombs, and you just win off of that. So that's why Sacred Autumn is a very, very strong anchor that you can draft in this Zeo Ran Cleave. Now, let's say they run... I went over this a bit on my anti-Zeo draft, but let's say they draft something like... Let's say you're first pick again, right? And you first pick Zeo, obviously, because you're trying to Zeo Ran Cleave, and let's say they draft this unit and Specteni. Or let's say not Specteni, let's say Lua. Because they're trying to anti-Zeo you, right? So with this, you would draft something like a Politis again, and your Ran. So that way your Sacred Auden will not cut, and you know they're drafting anti-Zeo because of Lua and A. So that here they would pick like Spectre Tenebria here, and then General Pergus. Right? Now here you would draft Summertime again because that deals with all the stealth here. And last pick, let's say, is going to be Euphine. It could be Rowana, right? Let's say it's Rowana or Euphine. Let's just say Euphine. Let's mix it up. Because Euphine works too, right? The Euphine here, right? And then their last pick, they need one more stealth unit, right? So let's say their last stealth unit is... What's a common stealth unit that's picked all the time? Like Faithless Litica, I guess. Right? So they draft this versus you. No matter what they ban, so your ban here should always be their fastest unit. So in this case, it could be Lua or Flitica, but usually it's gonna be Lua. So they get rid of that, and they're not gonna ban Zeo, right? Most likely they're gonna ban something like Ran, is my guess. So let's say they ban Ran, and you have this, right? So now all you have to do is just push back this G perk, and then you just win. Because yes, they push back, they push up. I think it's 7% CR, I believe, after Politis S2 passive cut. So Flitty is only gonna be pushing up by like 7%, while your Euphine pushes up by 20, right? So and if your Euphine is speed tuned properly to cut after your Zeo, that's pretty much guaranteed turn. And after Euphine goes, you just S2. Yeah, you'll probably Aiden, but she won't kill Summertime, right? So you S2, and she won't kill Euphine either because she'll have defense buff. So you Soul Burn S2, and then you just S3 kill something, and then Summertime goes, and you just bombs the rest, and they all just die. Right? So there's always an answer to a lot of these things. Let's do one more, okay? So let's just get rid of this. What's one that we haven't done yet? So let's say their first pick. Let's say they draft Spectre Tenebria first. Their first pick Spectre. And let's say you go Zeo. And let's say you go Ran. Right? Oops, I gotta clone this. Right? And then Spectre Tenebria, let's say they draft like Politis. Right? And then let's say Sage Ball. Or like Destina or something. Let's say Destina. I don't know. Right? And here, you notice one thing about this team is they don't have any mitigations. So for you, you can draft a follow-up off of this. Let's say you can go like Jacko. Because Jacko doesn't rely on a non-attack skill to push. and Ran doesn't have to S2, you can just S3 regularly. And you can draft something like a Fire Cow Eric here to be able to just one-tap abilities. And now if they see something like this, they're gonna try and bulk up because they don't want to get one-tapped. So let's say they go like Scarewell here. I don't know how to spell that. Yep. And let's say they go like Sage Ball or something, right? To be able to cut. Actually, they wouldn't go Sage Ball here. They would probably go like Rem because you have a bunch of fire units, so they just pick Rem. And here you can go something like a Leica. Why do I keep typing that? I have to keep doing this. Okay. Because all these units are still squishy. Her S3 ignores damage mids, so you don't have to worry about Arrowwell. And here you can just ban the Rem here. So you don't have to worry about counterattacks. And let's say they ban your Leica. With this draft, you can just S3 regularly. Jackal is still gonna take the turn, right? Jackal can kill the Politis, and then kill the well, assuming you land the Soulburn, right? On Destina, then you can kill Destina after, or you can kill Scarewell, and then you can kill Politis right after, and then it's gonna be Cowrick versus S10, right? Well, all you have to do is just Soulburn the Destina with your Cowrick. And then she's reset, she can't do anything, right? S10 goes, but she won't be able to target the Cowrick, right? So she has to S2, Soulburn S1, and then S3 or something. And then Cowrick's gonna be in stealth, and then Cowrick just lab and kill you. So lots of different options versus whatever, like depending on what team you fight. So yeah, I know these were like very specific scenarios, but I just wanted to give some examples of drafts that you might see when you're playing Zeo Ran Cleave. So yeah, I hope this video helped, and I will probably... I think that's it. I don't have much else to talk about, so... Yeah, it was a pretty long video, actually. How long was that? 57, oh my god, it's almost an hour. Yeah, I went super specific in this video. But I hope it helped, and if you're going to start Ran Zeo cleaving, then let me know if this guide helped you. Yeah. Next Cleave, I've never talked for an hour, oh my god. Next Cleave guide video is gonna be probably a imprint Cleave guide. So be on the lookout for that. Alright, I will talk to you guys later. See you guys.